All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've saved some of the best for last, so thank you for sticking it out. I know a lot of information in one day. Welcome to our last session for the day. Would like to. My name is Wes Heinold. I'll be your moderator for this last session, and would like to remind you, if you haven't done so already, to place your phones on silent. And if you do need to leave the room, ask you to close the doors quietly, if you could, please. Mr. Doter, questions? Would you rather save them to the end, or
as we go, please?
As we go. So you've heard it directly from the man. If you have questions, please feel free to ask those during the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, this session is titled Conducting Home Run Safety Interviews to Solve Accident Investigations. And this presentation addresses investigation and interviewing skill sets that are less frequently practiced by safety professionals, but very critical when needed post-accident. Our presenter today is Mr. Christopher Doter. Doter recently retired from the United States Air Force after more than 21 years of service as a transport pilot and safety officer. Potentially the most experienced safety officer in the Air Force, Chris personally investigated and led safety board teams for 15 of the most serious aviation and industrial accidents, as well as a multitude of smaller mishaps in every area of the world and of various types and causes. He is a published member of the American Society of Safety Engineers and a member of an innovative safety technology development research team that received the FAA Excellence Award. And as a pilot, Mr. Doter has over 4,800 mishap-free flight hours around the globe in transporting corporate aircraft. Chris has twice been presented the Flight Safety Officer of the Year Award, and in 2005, the Air Force Association inducted Chris as a Jimmy Doolittle Lifetime Fellow, of which less than 50 have been awarded in history. He recently completed assignments in safety for Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson and as a safety administrator for the Alaska region. Ladies and gentlemen, please present a warm welcome to Chris Doter.
Thank you, everyone. A little bit difficult going at the end of the whole event here, but thanks for sticking around. We are starting a little bit late. I'm going to turn on the fire hose here and just give you everything that I know about interviews for the next 90 minutes. Might go a little bit late. If anyone does need to leave during the presentation, feel free. But I'll give you the whole spiel. We'll cut you short, and anyone that wants to stick around afterwards for questions, feel free, as well as asking them during the presentation here. You mostly heard all about me here. I just want to emphasize I do have a background in just about every different type of safety, occupational and industrial aviation, explosives. I am still here locally in Alaska and looking for a job. I do want to also emphasize I am not an interrogator, I'm not a law enforcement interview expert, and I'm not a psychologist. So people in those fields have expertise and additional tricks in their bag that I have picked up on over the years, but I intentionally don't use them during interviews for some reasons that I'll talk about. And everything that I talk about here is open source and nothing confidential in the Air Force. You can find all of this on YouTube and videos and whatnot. Okay, these are the previous toys that I had in the Air Force as I was a pilot flying around the world. So let me give you a scenario that we're going to set this whole thing as a background in. Let's say the most unthinkable thing just happened in your company. Some sort of major accident has just happened and the whole company's in upheaval. CNN shows up on scene and they're putting their camera right in the face of your company president saying, "What's going on? What happened?" Your company president's going, "Whoa, hey," and he turns to you and he says, "Find out what happened and do it right now." So, you being a good safety officer, you start the accident investigation. And right up front, you're going to interview witnesses. So an overview of what we'll talk about here, we'll talk about information about interviews in general and what to do before the interview. We'll talk about actually conducting the interview, break it down into 3 phases: the intro phase, the middle of question and answer sessions, and then how to wrap up the interview. I'll also talk about issues that often pop up during interviews, and then what to do after the interview. And I'm littering lots of airplane pictures throughout this. Why? Because I love airplanes. All right, so why do we talk about interviews? Well, as safety professionals, we're really good at our day-to-day activities. Performing inspections, going out there, filing paperwork, sitting behind a desk sometimes, and that kind of thing. But when a major incident happens and you have to perform an investigation, it takes an entirely different skill set from what we're used to using day to day. But these are critical operations that we need to be able to do and do well to serve our company. None of us are police detectives that do this for a living. So we've got to go on what we know when the unthinkable thing happens. Why talk about interviews? Well, forensic evidence that I find during an investigation has often shown me that golden bean, has often told me what the root cause was of that incident. But more often than not, interviews have given me the critical information that I need to know about that investigation. Or if nothing else, interviews have told me where I need to look to find that golden bean. And interviews can unearth info that forensics would never discover. If nothing else, interviews will give you the why. You may find out with forensic evidence, aha, here's what happened, but why did it happen? And we have to talk to people to do that. So tips and techniques that I'll talk about here throughout this presentation come from my own experience. I've also written an instructional pamphlet all about how to be a safety professional, how to do investigations and interviews. That is available for download from the website about this conference, as well as this presentation if you want to check it out later. The goal of interviews: you want to extract the most accurate and thorough information that you can from your witness that just participated in that event. Now, I'm going to use the word witness throughout this. This person you're talking to may be someone that was involved with the event. They may be a witness that saw the event, or they may not actually be involved with the actual event itself, but they may have some sort of background or have been involved somewhere in the chain of events leading up to that event that you need to talk to that person. Interviews, all about people. After an accident, I would love to go up to a witness and plug a USB drive into their brain and download their experience right into that USB drive and capture all that information. But it doesn't work like that. So as people, this becomes a social event, and it's a social interaction, one person to another. Therefore, it's an art, not a science. And a lot of this has to deal with emotional intelligence. Talked a little bit about this morning. And there are books and books written about emotional intelligence, so I'm not really going to go into what that is, but the applicable portions of that for interviews here. It is the ability to read and connect with others, the ability to relate to and importantly influence others, and is the awareness of yourself and the ability to manage your own emotions and feelings. And that has all to do with leadership, the whole focus of this conference. Everything that comes up here in interviews directly translates to leadership skills. Leadership and safety, hand in hand. 3 types of the investigator emotional intelligence. Some of you are a people person, just by nature. If you're not a people person, maybe you're someone that actually sees little value in people skills. Or you're not a people person, but you're really interested in people and people skills. I actually happen to be the third kind here myself. My wife would actually laugh if she heard me here talking about feelings and emotions. So that's not something that I'm actually known for. If you're the first kind of person, a people person, you may look at the things that we're talking about here during the interviews, and you're like, well, this is silly, and that's obvious. Of course that's how you relate to people. If you're the second kind of person, you may say, well, this is kind of silly. Why do I need to do that? It's an interview. I ask a person a question, they give me the answer. What else is there to it? Well, unfortunately, if you go about it in the wrong way, you're going to completely shut down that witness, and you're not going to get the information that you need to do your job. Oh, the little picture here. This is a picture of my brain, and so if you can see it, there's a tiny little bit there that actually has some social skills, and that's what I have to access when I'm doing witness interviews. Some axioms there about knowing yourself, starting with knowing what your own skills are, what your strengths are, what is your personality type, what is your instinct when you go and you interact with people, what biases do you have? Something that I know about myself is I'm a pretty big guy. I can come across as being very physically intimidating. Coming from the military, I have the ability to speak very loud, very aggressively. That's something I have to rein in on myself, and I specifically keep that squashed down way low. Now, that's also a tip that I can put in my bag of tricks. So if I ever need to bring that out and I need to be aggressive, I absolutely have that ability. Now, that's not really something I do in interviews, usually, but that's available if I need it. Next, know your purpose. What is the root charter? What is the whole purpose of you doing this, this investigation? And that's really going to tie into what is your company's purpose, what is your company's charter on doing safety. Now, OSHA talks over and over about when you do investigations, it really should be rooted in accident prevention. So more than likely, that's going to be a root charter. However, it's easy to say, okay, this is all about accident prevention. But really, if that really is your focus and only your focus, then don't blur it. When you go into an investigation, when you're talking to a witness, don't blur this with, okay, information that I get, I'm going to hand over to the president and that might get you fired. That kind of thing blurs the sole focus on accident investigation. If you're not sure exactly what your purpose would be in a hypothetical investigation, you need to go back and sit down with your company president today and make that perfectly clear on what your purpose is. If you do work for a government authority, your purpose is going to be a little bit different. NTSB doing investigations, their focus is different than accident prevention. They have a different charter. Is your purpose to assign fault? Be very clear if that is what you're looking for or not. You need to determine legal culpability. Most likely, no, you're not going to be conducting a legal disposition. You're probably not a lawyer, and you don't even have the authority to do that. So, talking about people here, it all starts with the rapport. Rapport, up and down. This is the most important thing of the entire interview, is establishing that connection with the witness. Most important piece. An interview is a 30-minute relationship between you and the other person. So if you don't know the other person, you have to establish that relationship and that rapport right off the bat. Connect with the witness, and the tone that you set at the very start of the interview will determine in the first 30 seconds how the whole rest of the thing is going to go. Whether you're actually going to get the information or whether it's going to be a hostile setting. And it's up to you. So create a relaxed and non-threatening environment where that person feels comfortable in talking to you. Having just a conversation and they can open up, they can drop their guards, and they can, they can just share information with you. Make it conducive to the information flow. Now, do you work in a small enough company where anybody that you could potentially interview, that you would already know them? Well, then establishing the rapport, it's already started. That's the bad news. The good news is you have something to do about it. Every single day you're on the job as a safety professional, you are building your credibility. You are building your reputation. And whatever that is, that credibility and that reputation, you are going to take into that interview. So if you're the kind of safety officer that is going around doing write-ups, if you're all about getting people in trouble, telling people no, kind of a negative perspective, when you get into that interview, that person is going to be very standoffish and, I don't want to talk to you, this is going to be a very negative experience. The bad news is, regardless of what kind of person you are, you already have a mountain of things stacked up against you. Starting with, the powerless position of you, the investigator. So interviews are not a two-way exchange of value. The person that you are interviewing has everything that you want, and you have nothing tangible that you can offer them in return. You can't offer them absolution, you can't offer them immunity, you can't offer them compensation for anything that they give to you. The only thing you can give back to them is gratitude, thank you for talking to me, and a promise about how you are going to use the information that you get from them and from that interview. So you, the investigator, you want it all. You want all the information that that witness has without giving anything in return. Completely inequitable. You can't compel the witness to talk. You have no legal authority to hold somebody in contempt, throw them in jail for not talking to you. So you need to be the good guy. You need to establish that rapport and get them on your side to enlist their help in the accident prevention. If you encounter somebody that doesn't want to talk, I've only had this once in my entire career where I'm talking to a witness and he says, I am not saying anything to you. So I backed everything up, tried to establish more of a rapport. In this case, the Air Force allowed me to offer them confidentiality, and I did so, really trying to show that person that they could talk to me without repercussion. In my case, they kept climbed up, and I wasn't able to do anything, and that was okay. I was able to go on and solve the investigation through other means. It's possible, but very rare that happens. You have all these other barriers that are stacked up against you and against establishing the rapport. So from the beginning, you need to be using these tips and techniques to take every one of these bricks out, little by little, take down that wall, that barrier, and establish that rapport with your witness. These barriers are your witness's memory is steadily degrading from the very first second after the accident. They may have experienced trauma, and their emotions may be affecting the perceptions and the accuracy of the information you get. As unfamiliar as you may be with doing large-scale investigations, your witness has no familiarity with investigations. They hear the word investigation and interview, and they're immediately thinking, holy crap, I'm going to go into an inquisition. They go in with the assumption that you're looking for heads to roll, and they're going in with a negative attitude, a fear that they could get in trouble. They also assume that you are a backroom bean counter that doesn't know a thing about them, about the real world, what it's really like to be out there on the line, doing their job, whatever they just experienced, and your job is to second guess them. They assume this about you. And another barrier is that sometimes you're required to do official things. Even if you're not required by your own company rules, you really should do it anyway. You might be required to tape record the interview, and if not, go ahead and yes, do that anyway. And you might want to read an official statement up front, telling them exactly what they can expect and exactly how you are going to use the information that they give you, and whether you are able to offer confidentiality or not. Most likely you will not be able to offer that. All right, so here's what you have going for you. This is good news. Witnesses want to tell their story. They just experienced something and they have all this information inside. They're just dying to get it out. They're dying to talk to you, and they want to help. They want to be the good guy. So you got that going for you. Enlist that help. And the ball is in your court. You're in charge. And I don't mean that in a power-hungry way. What I mean is you have the ability to do whatever you need to do to make this a successful interview, to establish that rapport, and to drop the barrier. Yes, go ahead.
On the previous slide, there was a parenthetical that said Alaska's single party consent.
Yes, thanks. I skipped over that. Good job. Okay, so as far as recording the interview, Alaska state laws say that you have to have the consent of one party in order to record a conversation. So you, the investigator, of course, you're consenting, so that covers all legal ability. So yes, you are able to tape record any interview that you have. Thank you very much. Keep me accountable, I skipped over that. Okay. Oh, Bill Murray there, so that's what you have going for you. Starting investigation, so preparing for the interview. Before we get to the actual interview. When you start the investigation, let's assume that the emergency's over, all medical has already been taken care of, fire department's been there, they put out the fire, whatever, and now you move in your phase in the investigation. You're going to start by identifying the witnesses, who they are, and you want to separate them. You want to put them into separate individual rooms or quarters until you're able to get to them and interview each and every one separately. Now you want to be honest and tell them what's going on as you're doing this. Just be genuine, tell them, hey, it probably might be about a half hour before I'm able to get to you. So while you're doing that, your rapport starts with your very first contact. Before the interview, from the very first time you meet them, first impression, yes, that makes all the difference. And you want to be human, you want to take care of their needs, food, snacks, make sure they're taken care of post-emergency. While they're waiting for you to talk to them, have them write down a statement. You all probably know that, yes, this is important to do. So it immediately captures their memory before it changes into grades. Have them write down a statement, even if you're about to interview them, like right now. There's not anything so important that you have to interview somebody right now that you can't take the time for you to get prepared. Take time for you, and in the meantime, have a pertinent person write down a statement. Now you may have a pre-filled out statement form for your company saying certain things about confidentiality or whatnot for people to write down statements. If you do, that's great. But even more important than handing them those particular forms, if I'm out in the field, I don't have certain forms, I don't care. I'm going to have them write down something on a napkin, on the back of an envelope. It is most important that they write down that written statement before you talk to them. Really quick, accidents that happen on a Friday night, don't let them sit and stew over the weekend. It's so easy to say. To find something that happened on a Friday night, you don't know who's involved, you find a piece of broken equipment, don't know when it happened. It's so easy to say, okay, everybody's home, let's just pick it up on Monday and go from there. Don't fall for that trap. Monday's going to come around, you're going to go hunting for witnesses, and people are going to be, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're going to go talk to a shop, and they're going to say, oh, well, we had a changeover, and sorry, we threw out all that particular stuff that you're looking for. That kind of thing. More about preparing for the interview. Make a list of questions that you want to ask the people. Right now, before you get into the reactive mode of an investigation, you may want to write out questions that you know you're going to have to ask everybody anyway. Start with the basics. So what are you required to ask people based on your company's operating regulations? What are you required to ask people? What are you going to have to ask to put in your report? Then go to universal types of questions that you want to ask everybody that has a pertinence, the years they worked for their company, and so on and so forth. And then go from on to that to think to yourself, who is this particular person, and what info might this particular person possess that I need to know and I need to extract out of their brain to assess the accident and perform the investigation. All right, preparing for an interview. There's a bunch of standard stuff that I bring to every interview. You're going to be doing a lot of talking. So every time I bring a water bottle. Throat lozenges are great because you could be talking for hours and hours and hours. If you're an introvert like me, not used to talking, voice could go out. Obviously, you want to bring a pad of paper and pen to take notes. And you do want to voice record everything, so bring some sort of voice recorder. After that, something else, you may want to think about bringing business cards so you can hand them out to your witness and tell them, if you think of anything else, call me at this number, or if you find somebody else that might have information, have them give me a call. After that, something else that I found to be very useful is to bring visual aids. So, if you have a map, a diagram of the accident site, bring that. Bring a marker and a whiteboard for them to draw on. And then bring 2 or more models of some sort. If it's a vehicle, a little toy car works great. Airplanes, little airplane models. If it was an accident with an electrical panel, see if you can get a diagram of the electrical panel. And the reason is, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a demonstration is worth at least 10,000 words. It is so valuable for a witness to show you this is the positional relationship between these 2 events. Now the car was coming this way and this one went that way, and so he skidded kind of like this and clipped the back quarter, that kind of thing. Something that a witness may be describing to you in words, you could totally misperceive that, thinking that he's telling you one thing when really she's trying to tell you something else. Oh, and if you don't have models with you, use whatever you got. Coffee cup, erasers, it really doesn't matter. All right, so then go ahead and set up the interview room. You do want to have a private room where you're not going to be disturbed. Make sure that it's comfortable and that there's no distractions. So no open window on the wall where trees blowing in the wind or cars passing by are going to be distracting the witness as you two are having a talk. Put some sort of medium table between you and the witness. So for me, this table here would be perfect for me to sit on one side, and I'm going to put the witness on the other side. Put those visual aids that I just talked about, put them on the witness's side of the table. They don't do you any good. Put them on the witness's side of the table in easy reach for them to use it, so that you're not, during the interview, having to tell them, oh, please pick up those little toy cars and play with them and show me what. So they're naturally going to be talking about, they're going to, I want to show you something, aha, and they're just going to pick them up and exactly show you what happened. So, in general, this is a pretty good setup room, but don't make it like a James Bond interrogation. So, dark, cold, dead cellar, not very conducive to establishing a rapport there. All right, so what to do when there's multiple witnesses? You have a whole bunch of people that you want to interview. Well, like I said, whenever possible, you want to do them one at a time. If it's a group that you're interviewing, consider, do you want to talk to the group leader first, or do you want to talk to them last? There's benefits in doing it either way. All things being equal, I generally hold the group leader towards the last, or the person that was actually flying the airplane, driving the car, whatever it is. I find that talking to everybody else first, I find background information, I can get a good idea of what happened during the accident, and then I have an even better idea when I talk to that group leader, that more of a key witness, what are the key questions that I need to be asking them about the very particulars that I need to get down into. When you're talking to a whole bunch of people, you're going to get very fatigued. It's very emotionally draining to do this, particularly when it goes over the course of several hours. When you get to that last witness, you're going to have an assumption that, okay, I think I know what happened by now. I think I know everything. And you're going to have a tendency to just kind of skip through the last people. Don't do that. So take a break before your last interview. Get yourself refreshed, take a drink of water, have a little snack, even if that person has to wait another few minutes. So you go in refreshed to those last interviews. You can give that person as much credit as you gave everybody else, as much time and as attention, because you never know when one person might have a little golden nugget of information that is key to you solving the whole shebang. There are times where it's valuable to interview a group all at once. And this would be probably a group that maybe they're not directly involved in the accident, but again, involved somewhere in the chain of events. So if it's an aircraft crash, maybe I want to talk to the team that refueled the airplane before it took off. They likely had, they didn't cause the accident themselves, but they may have seen something on the airplane or know something about the fuel itself that went into the airplane. So I'll sit down with the refueling team, all 5 or 10 of them at once. Don't want to go any larger than 10. Don't want to have it make it a very group setting. Challenge is when you do that, though. When you're talking to a group of people, individuals don't want to speak up. Naturally, you're going to have the group leadership. I want to take control. I want to show that I'm in charge, particularly to you as an investigator. And so that group leader is going to have a tendency, they're going to speak up, and they're going to answer your questions. Well, the little worker bee that is not the supervisor, they may have information that the group leader may not. So in order to counteract that, spread around your questions. Just like when you do a public speaking just like this, you want to engage everyone in the room and talk to them and whatnot. So engage everyone with questions, ask questions of different people and engage them. You're also in groups naturally going to get groupthink, where somebody's going to say, okay, and then such and such happened. And everybody else is going to go, yeah, I guess that is how it happened. Whereas if you interview them separately, they might not think that and they may have a different opinion. So, group techniques, talked about spreading around questions. Now you're going to be tape recording this, and if you have to listen to the tape recording later or create a transcript from that, it's going to be difficult to see who's talking. So 2 things that you can do. 1, every time you ask somebody a question, you can say, okay, Mr. Jones, what about blah, blah, blah? Now on the tape you know that it's Mr. Jones that's answering. Or you may say, Mrs. Smith, or you may instruct everybody that before they start talking, just that they identify with themselves with the name. So they would say, hi, I'm Mrs. Smith, and yeah, I think the answer is blah, blah, blah. And then you have that on tape. Either one of them works pretty good. All right, multiple investigators. Just like the witnesses, whenever possible, you want to have one investigator that's doing the interview. However, there are times where it's valuable to have multiple investigators. And that could be for having different types of expertise. So if I'm investigating a serious welding accident, I don't know anything about welding. So I may enlist the help of an expert welder to come with me so that he knows what kind of questions to ask that worker that I have no idea about. Or you may have a very important witness that you think is going to be key to that investigation. And if you have a group of investigators, you may want to have everybody watch. When you do that, though, there is a danger of ganging up on the witness. That it can be very distracting. Multiple people asking multiple questions about multiple subjects, and now that rapport really isn't established with any of them, and now your witness is going, they're off track, and I'm not going to be able to give you as accurate information. So, to avoid that, minimize the number of investigators that you bring into it. Consider videotaping the interview. So maybe there's just one person that's doing the interview, then everybody else can watch later. If multiple people do have to be in the room, think about how you're going to set up the room and conduct the interview. Don't be doing this. Don't take a table like this, or even bigger. 7 of you sit in suits with very stern faces. So this person comes in the room and they're going, oh my gosh, what did I just get myself into? That is not an interview. That's an inquisition. Don't be doing that. So if you do have multiple people, have one person sit and identify one person as the lead investigator. They're going to sit in the middle of the table directly across from the witness, and have others stay silent until the end. And then they can ask questions about their particular area of expertise. And maybe they're going to sit on the side of the table. So they're just going to watch, and they're not going to say anything unless something really doesn't make sense to them. Then they can jump in on the end. All right, so we're up to conducting the interview. So start with the intro phase. Once again, the rapport is so important right from the very start. So when somebody comes in, I'm going to greet them at the door. Hey, thanks for coming in. Give them a hearty handshake, and I'm going to look them right in the eye and be very human with them right from the very start. I'm going to ask them to sit down, say, thanks for coming in, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me. Now, they're going to feel like they didn't have a choice. So this right there is going to establish some kudos for you. You're going to score points for looking like a human being. Sit down, introduce yourself, and have a little bit of light banter about something. What that something is depends on how you can connect to the person. So if I'm talking to somebody that is a pilot, I'm just going to say, hey, I'm Chris Doder, and I was a pilot in the Air Force, and I flew such and such airplanes and whatnot. Establishing that connection, that commonality a bit there, whatever you can talk about. Mention your credentials that connect to the witness in the event. However, be genuine. So if I don't have any real commonality of background to this person, I might talk about the weather or something, But I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to pretend to know something that I don't. So I'm going to say, hi, I'm Chris, and you know what? I know nothing about fuels other than when you put them in the back of my airplane, that's how my airplane goes. So I'd really like you to teach me as we go through this interview. Teach me what I need to know about fuels, and I'm really interested in the processes used, if you could explain those to me. Be human and tell them you're glad that they're safe. It shows that you have priorities, that you're not just focused on bean counting. You're not a bean counter, you're not a desk jockey. You're really interested in them. And like I said, they're going to be looking you up and down and trying to decide in their mind if you are a backroom bean counter or not. At this point, some people like to tell the witness to relax. Personally, I think talk is cheap, so I don't say, go ahead and relax. Instead, I show them. And I'm doing that with everything that we're talking about. I do that with the way I'm talking to them in a nice, smooth, controlled manner, my mannerisms, and I'm showing them that they have nothing to worry about. I'm showing them that they don't have to be scared, and we're just going to have a human conversation, just the two of us. Set the foundations for the entire interview. So clearly tell them what the purpose is of that interview. If you have the ability to tell them, I am only interested in accident prevention. Nothing that you say here will be used for administrative action against you or anyone else. I am not looking to point my finger at anyone. I'm not looking to assign blame and not looking to get anyone in trouble. If you're able to honestly tell them that, then do that, because that scores mega points and really drops their guard, puts them at ease. Tell them how their statements will be used, whether you're offering confidentiality or not. And like I said, like this says here, this part is big. You're going to look them in the eye, be sincere. You're going to tell them, unfortunately, I need to tape record this. And they're going to say, okay, no big deal. And they're going to nod their head. And you're going to have to tell them, okay, I also have to read some official sounding statements, but once we get through that, don't worry about that. After that, we're just going to have a nice human conversation, just the two of us. And encourage them, point out the visual aid toys to them, and encourage them to use them during the interview. Ask if they have any questions before you start. So right there, that is about 2 minutes or so of you bringing them in, sitting them down, establishing the foundation. That right there, those 2 minutes, if you do it right, has the ability to establish the rapport that you need for the rest of the time. If you do it wrong, those 2 minutes are going to screw up the rest of the time. All right, and now you're going to actually start the interview. So, I'm going to start the tape recorder going, and then you're going to physically place it off to the side, deliberately. Have them watch you put the tape recorder aside. Now, for the first 45 seconds or so, they're going to be looking at it out of their side of the head nervously, and then they're going to forget that it's even there. If you don't pay any attention to it, they won't pay any attention to it. So from the start, I'm going to talk a little bit louder, I'm going to introduce myself for the tape. I'm going to say, I'm Chris Doder. It's the 29th of October, 2015. I'm investigating the crash of so-and-so, and I'm here with Mrs. Jones. Talking about this event. Mrs. Jones, I do need to read this official statement, so read through that, blah, 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 get through all this stuff that's legalese, and then those papers that you're reading from, exact same thing. Take those, physically place those to the side, and pay them no mind. Now, I'm deliberately doing this, so I'm showing them, I'm getting through the legal stuff that we have to do that's really important, and then I'm setting it aside, and now it's just you and me. And we're just talking. My opening statement after that is the exact same for every single person. Okay, Mr. Smith, thank you for being here. Let's just start with you telling us in your own words what happened. Please start with an appropriate point that explains the mishap situation, and then take us through the sequence of events to any point of resolution that you see fit. At that point, your part is done. You're over. Shut up and let that person talk, for the love of God. At that point, you've done so much talking, they are probably sick of you talking. They're just so pent up, they're just dying, and they're exploding to talk. So shut up and let them have their part. Your side is done. Don't interrupt them as they tell their story unless you just flat out don't understand something. So when they start talking, I'm furiously taking notes. I'm just scribbling down, taking notes on what they're saying. If I have a question about something, my technique, I'll write it down on my notes and I'll put a little star in the margin and circle it, letting myself know I need to come back to this and revisit this later. I will not interrupt them as they go through their story. They are dying to talk at this point. Yes, do take a lot of notes for your own benefit, even though you're tape recording things. It's generally easier for you to refer to your own notes rather than go back and, I think this person said that, let's find it somewhere in the tape recording. All right, once they're done, there is benefit in have somebody tell a story twice. So when they're done, you could have them start up, tell me it all again. When somebody tells a story twice, the second time, they're going to remember things that they didn't tell you the first time. That, oh yeah, I forgot that, and such and such. You can also judge consistency and accuracy between the two stories. Now the good news is, that's more of a technique used during a police interrogation, judging whether somebody is lying or not. And generally, you're not going to have to worry about that. The only reason that somebody would lie to you as a safety investigator, not a law enforcement official, is if they're trying to hide something that they did wrong, or if they want to appear important to you, because you are a authority figure of some sort. Either way, you're going to be able to, it becomes pretty obvious when it seems like somebody's lying to you. So not something you really need to worry about. I actually do not have people tell me a story twice because I find that written statement works. They're telling you everything in their written statement, then when they come in and they tell you, they're doing that a second time, and they're remembering things that they didn't put in their written statement. So their story, they may talk for 20 minutes, or they may tell you 2 sentences and stop. It may just be, yeah, I watched the car swerve into the embankment, I called 911, and that's about it. If somebody does tell you just 2 sentences like that and shuts up, what they're telling you is, I don't really trust you yet at this point to tell you more information. You don't have quite that rapport yet. So that's a signal to you that you need to work on that a little more. Because more than, it's most certain that that person has more information to tell you. Yes, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. So
Sure.
You want a few more of an interview, not interrogation, because you want them to feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
So if you've got their witness statement and then they're telling what happened and they're conflicting, do you mention that to them and say, really, because you said in your witness statement that they turned left, hit the tree on the right, but now you just said they didn't do that. So can you bring that up, or do you separate them?
Do be careful about that, because obviously anytime you get anywhere close to implying that somebody's a liar, their guard's just going to go right up and that report's out the window. There's a lot of times I don't even read that written witness statement before I go into the interview. If I have the time to do so, that's great. But if I don't, I'll read it later and see if there's any extra information in there. To answer your question though, regardless of whether it's written or they say different things during the actual talking part, what I'll do is I'll more come at it as a clarification point. And I won't point out to them that there was a discrepancy. I'll just ask them a third time and see what the answer is. So I'm sorry, I'm confused. Could you tell me again, did that car turn left or turn right? So I'm not pointing out to them that they caused a discrepancy. I'll take it on myself. And then I show like, I'm stupid, I don't know, I don't understand. It's on me. Okay? Thanks. Okay. When they're done talking with their story, regardless of how long they talk or what they say, after that, I always say, great, thanks. I appreciate you telling me that. Now you can probably understand that I've got a bunch of questions that I need to ask you. They know this is coming, so they nod their heads, and now you're into the second phase of the question and answer. This is the real meat of the interview. So, Q&A info flow. An interview is a one-way transfer of information. You're looking for them to tell you everything that they know without you really telling them anything back. Any info that you do give them could color the information that they're giving you. So you don't want to, in general, don't want to be giving them any information. particularly about anything that other witnesses have shared. Somebody says something, and I'll say, oh, you know what? Bob said that it was something different. Because if you do that, you're setting witnesses against each other, and you're playing them off each other. That also is more of a law enforcement interrogation technique. If nothing else, when you do that, you're violating any confidentiality, or at the very least any trust that Bob placed in you when he told you that information. So, treat each interview separately, and it's just a one-way flow of information about that person from that person to you. Like I said, in general, you don't want to provide anyone information. However, you can use the ability to give them information as another tool to establish rapport with someone that you're having a hard time with. Because if you're showing them information, then you're showing them a willingness for you to trade a little bit and to converse. You don't want to play, I've got a secret. It becomes very obvious when you're playing, I've got a secret and I'm not going to tell you, and that right there destroys the rapport. Just like Groucho Marx here on the old TV show, I've got a secret. So I'll use that as a tool in my bag of tricks. Tell you a story. So a couple of years ago here at Elmendorf, airplanes were landing, and afterwards we discovered that there was damage to the lighting that was on the runway. So one of the aircraft had damaged the lights. Went out there, I measured everything, looked at the tire treads and track marks in the snow, and figured out that it was one particular type of fighter aircraft. So I knew it was one of the fighters that had landed that day. And the wing commander said, okay, Chris, I want you to perform an investigation on this. Okay, fine. Start that, and I start talking to the fighter pilots. Now, fighter pilots are very special people, and they have very strong opinions of themselves and about things, and they're a little different. So I knew going into that me as a heavy transport pilot, that there would be a little bit of natural barrier there that I'd have to break down. So I used this as one of my tools to establish even more of a rapport. So like I said before, I started with, I'm Chris Doder, I fly such and such, you know, I'm obviously familiar with airplanes. Now, I'm not going to play I've got a secret with you. So I'll just tell you what I know, that these lights were damaged on such and such, I found them at this time, I measured the tire tracks, and I was able to figure out that it was this particular type of fighter aircraft. By me doing that, established that rapport, and I think that's the there. Oh, and also, a lot of them didn't even know what had happened, because, you know, it's after landing and you don't know what happened behind you. So, by me telling them that, it also gave them a little bit of background so that they knew what we're talking about in the interview, what the whole investigation was about. There's times you may have to do that. All right, so how to structure the question and answer portion. The good news is there's lots of different options of how to do it. There really is no one right way of doing it. So one thing you may want to do, you could start by clarifying the story that they just told you and asking the questions that you had just written down in your notes, circled in the margin. Another option you have, you could move away from the story, talk about something else, and then come back to the story later to assess their consistency, or to jog their memory, see if there's something that they may have forgot about when they told you that story. Something else that you could do is walk through a set list of question areas. Like I said, right now, you may want to go back to your office and come up with a list of questions that you want to ask in any particular investigation. And just a bunch of things that you could potentially ask about their different areas and issues. My technique, I personally decide on the fly what that specific witness needs in order to be accurate and thorough. I keep going back to that, accurate and thorough as possible. So if somebody's being cagey, they're being defensive, very reserved, then I want to keep them on their toes. I want to shake them up a little bit. So I'm going to jump around to different areas. I'm going to ask about this, I'm going to ask about that, then I'm going to come back to issue number one and ask something else about it. I want to, before they have the chance to get entrenched and dug in and be defensive about something, I want to ask them questions on the fly so they are naturally just providing information. Now, on the other hand, if somebody is really shaken up, they're just a trembling mess sitting right in front of me, I want to be very gentle with that person. and I want to take them by the hand, and I want to lead them through the process. So in that case, I'm going to be very gentle, I'm going to be very smooth, I'm going to be very linear in my line of questioning. One step at a time, start to finish. If you're coming up on frustration, talking with a witness about one particular issue, and there's some sort of tension that's rising, tension isn't good for rapport. So, you know what, I'll leave that alone for a little bit. I'll go talk about something else, and then later I'll come back to that frustrating issue when the tension has died down a little bit, and maybe it's safer for us to talk about that. Whatever you do, whatever technique you end up using, just stay conversational. Have it be natural. Flow, nice, smooth conversation between the two of you. All right, what do you want to ask about in the questions? What areas do you want to cover? Well, the short answer, unfortunately, is everything. You want to be as comprehensive as possible in your investigation. So, always cover the basics, what you're required to put in your report and such, anything that your regulations require. Then, things that aren't required, but you think are pertinent to that particular accident. But don't stop there. Keep going. Keep going outside the box. Don't just lock your focus into one particular area. Don't just get focused on, I'm just going to ask about human factors. And I'm going to keep digging on human factors. Because human factors may not be the most important thing. There may be an issue in ergonomics, maybe an issue in training that you haven't touched on, you haven't thought about. Ask about everything. Use your wits. Follow the gut. Where is the indicators coming from? What is this witness telling you that you need to ask about more? Follow the bunny trails that come up of, that's interesting, I think I need to ask a little bit more about that. And freely go outside the box of set questions. Obviously, without going into a witch hunt of, I want to find out what you did wrong on everything. Issues come up during every investigation that have nothing to do with that particular accident, but, that's interesting. I'll keep that in mind, and maybe I want to ask a little bit about more. Because you may find an unrelated issue that is going to cause the next accident in your company. And by you finding out about that the easy way in an interview before that accident happens, you may have just prevented the next big thing from happening. Do take note of those. Here's a tip. Your approval counts. Your witness naturally views you appropriately as an authority figure. And as such, when you're having a conversation with an authority figure, there's just a natural human tendency. You want to get that person's approval. Or that witness seeks to please you, whether they know it or not. So it's amazing when this particular phenomenon occurs. What happens is that a witness will answer questions of, so then I chose to turn the valve right, to the right. And they'll look at you, and it's an unstated question of, is that right? Or did I do good? And it's amazing when you, all of a sudden in an interview, you'll just realize, holy crap, that just happened. Realize when that happens, your witness is handing to you on a silver platter an opportunity to increase that rapport. So take it. You don't want to be praising everyone, telling them everything, whether they did it right or wrong, but just a natural, quick, hey, good job. Boom. You just increase that rapport. Be careful in using this power. We don't manipulate people. And as I'll talk about more, you don't want to correct a wrong answer. Here's another tip. Connect the witness's memory to the accident. Again, we're helping the witness to be as accurate and as thorough as possible. Have the witness recreate the event in their mind. You can have them close their eyes and talk through the event, or if they tell you that something happened, you may want to ask them, so, how did that make you feel? Now, do you care really how it made them feel? No, that's really not pertinent to your investigation. But by you bringing that up and causing them to have that emotional connection to whatever just happened, that, just human nature, that increases in their own mind a connection to the event, and they're able to be more accurate in the information that they're telling you. You may want to actually take them to the scene of the accident and walk you through what happened, recreating the event in their mind again. Do you have to put out a warning? Anybody that's really shooken up and exhibiting symptoms of PTSD, you don't want to be playing with this. You are not a psychologist. None of us, we're not going to put the witness on a couch and hypnotize them, anything like that. But just using little tips like this, like I said, you're increasing the accuracy of the information that that witness is giving you. Next part, issues that come up during an interview. Interviews may not be easy, so give a little bit of extra credit to the witness as you're going through this and when you're performing the overall investigation. So you're a paid armchair quarterback, really, whether you like it or not. That's your job. Don't forget what it's like to be out on the line, turning those wrenches, operating those valves, driving those vehicles. Put yourself in the witness's shoes. If possible, put yourself in the same environment of what happened in that event, in that accident. Spend extended time at the crash site. And I don't just mean go out and visit it and take pictures and do whatever. Just bring out a lawn chair and just sit there and just observe. Pay attention to what are the noises that are going on? What are the vibrations? What are the distractions going on? Are there smells? Is it good air? Is it tough to breathe there? Is it hot? Recreate that mishap in controlled conditions, if at all possible, and if obviously you're not going to create a whole another accident. So, aircraft crashes, we'll get in aircraft simulators, and we will recreate that exact event, including the weather at that particular time, radio calls and whatnot, and we'll recreate that over and over and over again. I will fly that airplane under the exact same conditions that those people experience, whether it's a broken aircraft and whatnot, to really appreciate what that witness experienced during that event. You have the infinite benefit of hindsight as an investigator. You're doing your job at altitude 0 at airspeed 0, meaning it is really easy for me to think when I'm standing right here, not a lot of distractions going on. Now, you put me in a car driving at 200 miles an hour, I'm white knuckling that steering wheel, and all my attention is focused on operating that vehicle. And now I'm not able to pay attention to other things, whereas that person may not have had that luxury. You're working out of a quiet, air-conditioned office. You have a whole bunch of coffee, 1 to 12 months to analyze what happened and make your decision, whereas that person may have had only seconds to do what they did. You have access to unlimited information to make your decision and make your judgment. Nobody's screaming at you, no background radio noise, no unnerving sounds, vibrations from broken equipment. You don't have interpersonal work issues with a co-pilot that at the exact wrong point in time, he's being more of a liability than an asset to me. And you are not making snap life or death decisions in the blink of an eye. In contrast, that person that you're interviewing, they may have just had an ultra-stressful experience. They had limited information to make the decision that they did. They may have no guidance. They may not have had any access to additional guidance. They may have had to just go with what they knew at that time. And they may have had just a few seconds to make the best choice possible under those conditions. And they may have thought they were going to die. Use that emotional intelligence, that empathy, to understand what that witness just went through and what the experience really was like. Let me reemphasize that. That person sitting in front of you may have thought that they were going to die. Don't ever discount that. That's some serious stuff. Like I said, give the witness extra credit. Were their actions reasonable under the circumstances? Use that reasonable person concept. We do not use the Chuck Norris can do no wrong standard and apply that to evaluate our coworkers. Nobody's perfect, not even Chuck. Now we're going to get into contentious. So again, the question is not did that person do everything perfectly, but were the actions that that person did, were they reasonable given the circumstances? All right, this could be tough. I'm going to get serious here for a minute. The investigations and interviews have the potential to be the worst thing that you will ever do in your career. I'm serious. We investigate bad things, not happy celebrations. And it's not easy talking about some of these bad things that happen. That witness may be an emotional mess from what just happened. You might be, that person may be injured, in pain. You may have to interview a burn victim in the hospital. You may have to interview somebody that just lost their legs. You may have to look into the eye of a wife that just became a widow and ask them sensitive questions about their husband. My question for you, these are not hypothetical. The question is, are you ready for that? Don't feel like you have to charge in on your own. I'm the safety officer. This is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to go do that. Don't feel like you have to do that with any help. And then after you do it, if you're shooken up by it, don't feel like, oh, I'm just a wuss. I need to toughen up, and I need to just keep doing that job. It's not weak to ask for assistance. If nothing else, call me. And we can talk about it. I've been there. I lost my best friends in the C-17 crash here in Elmendorf 5 years ago. I know what it's like. I've been in those situations. Each one of you now has my business card. Feel free to give me a call at any point, whatever you're going through, and we'll talk it over. All right, let's get a little bit more lighthearted. What to do when a witness surprises you. There's going to be times during an interview where the witness says something that just catches you totally off guard, slams a 2x4 upside your head, and you're like, whoa, didn't see that coming. So, war story time, tell a story. After September 11, 2001, I was picked as part of a team, went out to Central Asia, and I built a new air base out there that ended up being one of the premier air bases to fight operational enduring freedom ever since then. 2006, just happened to be back there at the same place when something major happened. So, this is a Tupolev 154, a Russian-made aircraft that was owned by the government of Kyrgyzstan, and this is a U.S. Boeing 707, belonged to the U.S. military. What happened was this airplane had just landed on the runway, and then this aircraft was cleared for takeoff before this airplane had left the runway. The two airplanes collided, the wings ran into each other, ripped off the left wing of the U.S. airplane, and this is what happened. So this was taken by, with a cell phone by security forces, cops from the other side of the airfield. And you can see, yeah, it's pretty dramatic with what's going on. I've muted the audio here. It's actually some rather colorful language by the cops. They're talking about what they're seeing there. Rather dramatic. So, there I was. This is my side of the story. I was fast asleep in my bunk. This is the middle of the night. I get this knock on the door. Chris, we know you're a safety guy. You need to get out to the runway right now. And I wasn't even doing the safety job at the time. So I ran out there, and when I got out there, I saw something that looked kind of like this. This is not the actual accident, but it was somewhere in this scope. Rather dramatic, middle of the night, pools of foam and pools of water and unburned fuel all over the runway, and it looked like something from a war zone. It was pretty interesting. Oops, dang. And and I just gave away my secret there. So, right off the bat, I interviewed the firefighters. And let me tell you, firefighters, they go their entire career training for something like this and may not ever get to do this. So these guys, this was their Super Bowl, and they were jacked up. They were just flowing adrenaline, flowing through their veins. They are on cloud 9 of what they just got to do. So, I'm talking to the lead firefighter, and he's painting this apocalyptic vision for me. And yeah, so we pulled up on the airplane, and I send some of my guys out there, and they start knocking down the fire, and I deploy my other guys out here to the head of the airplane. And then he said something that I will never forget the rest of my life. That's when I ran inside the burning airplane. And I could not help myself. My mouth dropped open, and I said, "You did what?" And he smirked at me, and kind of like I was being naive. And he said, "Well, yeah, I'm a firefighter. That's what we do." So, me, I'm a pilot. When I see something like this, every single instinctive bone in my body tells me to take my little big body and all of my people and get out of there, get away from that. I don't think any sane person in the world that's not a firefighter has the instinct, I need to run inside that. But to understand, to the firefighter, that's what they're trained to do. So that firefighter had to go inside the airplane because he didn't know if there were people still left on the airplane that needed rescuing. That taught me a lot of lessons about a lot of different things that I won't even be able to talk about here, or don't have the time to at least. But also about how to conduct interviews. Rather dramatic stuff. So what to do when the witness surprises you? Well, don't do what I did. So, stay composed and show no reaction whatsoever. You want to just keep taking notes, keep listening to what that person's saying. Let them keep talking. When they're done talking, don't show any surprise. Keep talking with the same tone in your voice. You can keep talking about that maybe. You don't want to pounce on that issue. Maybe you want to go to another issue and then come back to that one that just surprises you. Why? Well, witnesses are constantly reading you. They're constantly guessing why you're asking particular questions. If you pounce on one particular issue, they're thinking, that person thinks that such and such caused it. And so I need to be careful when I talk about such and such issue. If you pounce, they're going to have all these thoughts at the exact same time, all in their head. Holy crap, oh no, I just said something wrong. I did something wrong. I'm going to get in trouble. Why are they really surprised by that? And should I stop talking to them? Your rapport goes way down if you show your surprise, and you lose cool points, just like that. So don't say, you did what? Next thing, take off all your other hats. So you most likely have some sort of other role or authority in your company other than being an investigator during an investigation. Take off all those other hats. So during an interview, you are not all these other things. You're not an instructor. You are not a compliance evaluator. During that interview, your only focus is on whatever your charter is, most likely that accident prevention. Don't correct a wrong statement that somebody says. If somebody tells you a wrong procedure, don't teach them the right procedure in the interview. This interview is very important, and it's so tough to do. You may just be inside, I need to say such and such. Don't. Stay quiet, write down that discrepancy, and then after the investigation, or at least after the interview, give it to the appropriate authority to correct that, whatever that deficiency is. So by you staying quiet, you're going to peel that onion. You're going to ask more about whatever deficiency that is that you're finding. You'll discover deficiencies in personal knowledge, organizational culture, the discipline and operational practices. Maybe you're going to find the root cause of this accident, or like I talked about before, you may find a very, very critical deficiency in the organization that has nothing to do with this one, but is going to end up causing that next accident, or is going to tear the company apart. Consider a situation where you're investigating an accident that you don't know when it happened and you don't know who was involved. So you're talking to a bunch of different potential witnesses. The first person comes in and he says, well, I did such and such. Now if you jump in and you say, well, no, actually that's not correct. The correct procedure is blah, blah, blah. Well, what happens? So that witness is now affected. Anything that that person tells you after that is now affected by what you just said. So that person may try to redeem themselves to you. That person may try to cover their butt of, no, I really did things right, and here's why. That person may stop talking to you, like I talked about before. If nothing else, after the interview, I guarantee that person's going to run back to their office, they're going to look up that procedure, and if nothing else, even if you're professional and they're professional, and you tell them, please don't talk to any other witnesses about that, the next work shift that comes up, you are going to be the talk of the town, this investigation. And the next work shift that comes up, somebody's going to say, boy, you know, they asked me about such and such blinking light. Do you think that's really important in the accident that happened? And now there's going to be rumors flying around, and anybody that comes and talks to you after that is going to go in with the assumption that that little blinking light is your golden baby that they're going to get quizzed on. Stay quiet. Don't correct that deficiency during the interview. It could be somebody coming in with a poor appearance, a bad attitude, faulty job knowledge, maybe they're acting unprofessionally, or they have uncontrolled emotions. So whatever they're doing, they're demonstrating to you what their character is, or what their level of discipline is, or whatever. As an investigator, you are a collector of info and clues, and they are doing your job for you. They are handing you these info and clues hand over fist to you. So don't stop them from doing your job for you. Let them do that job. Keep letting them talk and demonstrating to you what's going on. Every little clue counts. Maybe it's an indicator you need to look more at that witness. It might have nothing to do with the accident or event, but maybe it's an indicator of a larger systemic issue of that office or of the overall company. Is there a problem of discipline in that office that you're discovering? As you talk to other witnesses, maybe you probe the same area to see if you're finding commonalities in multiple witnesses. Maybe you decide, you know what, I need to send out a survey to all these kind of workers to find out how deep this problem goes, how widespread it is across multiple job sites. Peel that onion, and then, like I said, notify the unit leader and let them decide how they want to fix it after the investigation. So you're not correcting anything in the interview. All right, I've been talking for a while. Let's watch a little video. This comes from the TV show Brain Games that my kids and I really like. And you're going to be quizzed on what you see as a witness, so pay attention.
We're on location of a movie set in the 1950s, complete with cameras, bossy director, and on-set police for security. We've also invited a group of spectators to watch the filming. Pay attention along with them as the crew gets the final shot of the movie. Try to remember what you see.
There we go. Final shot, everyone.
Action!
Keep watching. Everything you see is fair game.
Look out of the car! Cut!
Okay, that wasn't part of the movie. Did you catch what just happened? I know, it was a lot to take in. But we're going to let you in on a little secret. The actors, director, crew, and police are all in on it. Everyone, in fact, except our spectators. The crash was staged just to test their memory, and yours. We're going to challenge your brain to find out how reliable your memory is. Ace the test, crash and burn. We surprised you and our spectators with a car crash that was actually a test of your memory. Let's take another look. Your job is to remember everything you see. Imagine you just witnessed a real crime. Your memory of what happened is incredibly important for investigators. And former Las Vegas Police Sergeant Chris Curtis is here to test your memory. He's going to ask you and our other witnesses 3 questions about what you just saw. Ready?
What color was the car that got hit?
Think back and try to be accurate. Got your answer?
Did you say blue? Good, that's correct. Next question. How fast do you think the car was going when it bumped into the other car?
What do you think? Was the red car going 10, 15, 20, 30, or 40 miles an hour? Got your answer? Did you guess around 20 miles an hour? If so, you agree with 80% of people we showed this video to. Before we reveal if you're correct or not, let's see what our spectators have to say.
How fast would you say the car was going when it smashed into the other car?
I'd say 40.
Between 40 and 50.
I'm going, what, 30 miles an hour?
Definitely 50 miles an hour.
These people think the speed was really high. Is that what you thought? Or did you think it was much lower? It turns out the actual speed was 20 miles an hour. Is that what you guessed? So why were our eyewitnesses so much higher? The thing is, only some of our witnesses guessed high. Others were much closer to the real speed.
How fast do you think the car was going when it bumped into the other car?
Probably about 10, 15 miles per hour.
15 miles per hour.
15 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Okay, how can this guy think it's 50?
Between 40 and 50.
And this guy think it's 15?
15 miles per hour.
After all, they both saw the same crash. But if you've been paying attention, you'd know it's not the crash that matters. It's the question. Listen carefully to Sergeant Curtis.
How fast would you say the car was going when it smashed into the other car? How fast do you think the car was going when it bumped the other car?
Did you catch it? He said smashed to some witnesses
Smashed into the other car, smashed into the other car, smashed into the other car.
and bumped to others, including you.
When it bumped the other car.
The word smashed actually increased the speed of the red car in our spectator's memory.
So I want to tell you, the actual speed of the accident was 20 miles an hour.
I don't believe that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that would surprise me. It seemed like it was 30 miles an hour.
You're kidding, right?
That's a big difference.
It's incredible if you think about it. One word has the power to totally rewrite a memory. Don't feel bad if you got the speed of the car wrong. We're going to give you another chance to test your memory.
Final question. You saw the driver blow through a stop sign right after the accident. Yes or no?
Before we reveal the answer, let's see what our spectators have to say.
Did you see the car run through the stop sign after the accident?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I saw him go through the stop sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Watch the replay. Do you agree the driver ran through a stop sign? Look closely, and you can see it's actually a yield sign. Did Sergeant Curtis mess with your memory again? If so, you're not alone.
It would surprise you to know that it was not a stop sign, but it was a yield sign.
Let's go back and check it out. I think it was a stop sign.
So what was going on in your brain when Sergeant Curtis manipulated your memory along with our participants? Experts call it the misinformation effect, and it reveals memories are never a perfect recall of an event.
Every time you receive new information from a trustworthy source, your brain reshapes your memory based on those details.
And memories formed under stress, like a car accident, are especially vulnerable to change. To upgrade your memory of intense events, experts recommend writing down what you saw immediately after it happens, when everything is still fresh in your mind.
Okay. I find that rather fascinating, rather important for accident investigations. If it is really important to your investigation that you know how fast that car was going before it crashed in the other car, don't shoot yourself in the foot by making your witnesses give you bad info. Instead of asking bumped or smashed, how fast was the other car going when the accident happened? Something that is neutral. There's no coloring of the words that will affect your witness. So remember, you're looking for accurate and complete information. As it is, witnesses may remember wrong things. It really is true, if you've heard this, in aircraft crash investigations, at least one witness will always insist to you that the aircraft was on fire before it crashed, even if it really wasn't. They will insist. Witnesses just think that they remember things that they really don't. So you need to cut through all that inaccurate stuff to get the real information. You're going to do that by asking open-ended questions. So you want to minimize the leading or suggestive questions. So a bad question would be, was the aircraft on fire before it crashed? Because just like we saw in the video, everyone's going to say, yeah, I guess it was. Because you're suggesting that information, you're putting that in their head. So a better question would be, did you notice anything unusual about the aircraft before it crashed? But still, you're kind of implying something there, that you're getting at some sort of information. So the best question to ask would be, what can you tell me about the aircraft before it crashed? You're not suggesting anything at all to them, and you are just getting the information that they really have in their head about what really happened. Now, when you do this and you ask really open-ended questions, there's times that it'll become obvious that you're being too vague and the witness will get confused about what you're asking. So in these times, okay, fine, you got to dial it back a little bit. So keep asking open-ended questions, but be a little bit more specific about the categories of questions that you ask about. So, was the aircraft making any noises in the air? Did you feel any strange vibrations? Was anything coming out of the airplane? You're trying to minimize what you're putting into their heads, and you may not, and maybe you're not interested in the noises of the vibrations. But by kind of doing this fake and asking the different questions, you're minimizing the suggestions. Advanced techniques for your bag of tricks. Okay, so these are human communication practices to shape a witness. So let me do something here. I'm going to come over and, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a little interview with you. So, hi, I'm Chris. Hi, Greg. So I am doing a hypothetical investigation about your morning. So can you tell me what time you woke up this morning?
I woke up at about 6:25.
Okay. And what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had an omelet, farmer's market omelet at Snow City Cafe.
Nice, great place. And what did you do after breakfast?
And I caught a ride with one of my colleagues, and we came into the conference here a little bit late. We caught the very end of Neil's presentation.
Okay, he's actually not going for what I'm demonstrating right there. So, this is the power of silence. And silence is naturally unnerving. It is unnatural in a conversation. You all can feel it as I'm talking to Greg here, and then I'm not responding. I'm choosing to be silent. Normally what happens, Greg's a little bit too good. I think he's had interrogation training. So normally what happens is when you stay silent, this tension keeps building until your witness feels compelled to say something. And when they say something, they're naturally going to keep answering in more detail whatever questions you just asked. So normally, Greg, what I get when I do that to people is they'll say, they'll tell me what they did after breakfast, and I'll let it build up. And then they'll start telling me what they did after that. So they'll just continue in more detail. You can use this with somebody that's being defensive, somebody that's giving you two-word answers. Use this, and it's not really mean. It's just a little bit of mental communication jujitsu that you have in your bag of tricks if you need to pull out and use with a witness. Does strategic pauses. Here's another thing, pacing. So I try to talk in a very measured tone. I'm actually going a little bit fast in this, trying to keep you all on time. Talking fast can be a mark in some professions of confidence and knowing what you're doing. Fighter pilots. Fighter pilots do this all the time. They talk very fast, very quick, very abbreviated. In interviews, though, that doesn't work so well. If you rush, you're rushing yourself, you're rushing the witness. The only person that is going to lose by you talking fast is you. There is no time limit for any sort of interview. So, be relaxed, talk slowly, and let the witness be the one that gives you the information. Also, use personal space and body language. This is just kind of body language 101. So, when I'm sitting and talking to somebody, if I lean a little bit forward, I'm showing interest in what they're talking about. Now, if I lean too far forward, and specifically if I get into their body space, it comes across as aggressive. So I'm not doing that, but I'm leaning just a little bit forward to show them I'm interested in what you talk about. Now, it's tough to sit in just one spot for 45 minutes, so I'll kind of move around. And when I do that, I'll sit back a little bit. And when I sit back, now I'm showing them that I'm relaxed, and they can be too. But I want to be very careful in those 45 minutes that I don't start slouching. I'm not going to cross my arms, because when I do that, I'm showing them I'm not really interested. I'm closed off from what you're saying. And I will alternate the way I move. I'll be very conscious of my body as I'm talking to them and what message I'm sending to that witness. Regardless of what you're doing, maintain that eye contact. So you're showing sincerity and you're really connecting with them. and you're talking at their eye level. Okay, wrapping up the interview, we're pretty much at the end here. So the last topic that I want to talk about here is you can really make your money at the end of an interview. Don't cut yourself short. The way that I do things, the way I teach, is the same way that I do interviews. I start big picture, then I go way down small into the details, and then I pull it back big picture. So interviews, big picture is, please tell me about the event from start to finish. The details is me questions and answers way down into the weeds, into the details. Then at the end, I'm pulling it back big picture. And I'll do this with 2 questions, and these are rather important. You may want to write these down or pull up the presentation later. First question. You've got a lot of detailed knowledge of this subject and the event. In your opinion, what caused this accident? So realize the person you're interviewing most likely has a lot more knowledge about that subject than you do. You are interviewing the expert welder, the expert electrician, whatever it is. So they may have some sort of discernment about what happened, and they may be able to do your job for you and what really caused this accident. Now sometimes they'll come up with some things that are obviously just out of line. You can throw that out the window. Second question. What, if anything, could have prevented this accident? When you ask this of somebody, they're going to go, whoa, they're going to be caught off by surprise. Like, wow, I didn't expect you to ask that question. I don't know. And they're going to think about it for a minute. And then they might come up with something that is able to prevent this accident. Again, doing your job for you. However, it's fascinating. It's so disappointing how often you're going to get this response that can be summed up in 7 words. It is just one of those things. And it's amazing how often you get that attitude, not just in interviews, but in safety in general. Just, you know what? Crap happens. Stuff breaks. It's just one of those things. You know what? I don't think we could have prevented this. So disheartening when you get that answer, which you will get a lot. Obviously, we as safety professionals, we don't have that luxury to just throw up our hands and say, it's just one of those things. Each and every accident really is preventable, and it's your job to find out what it would have taken to prevent that accident and then implement that. These questions, those 2, have the potential to be have more value than the entire rest of the interview, maybe. The final touches, wrapping up the interview, I sincerely thank that person for your help. You're still being human, being genuine. Add personal touches. Again, boy, I'm really glad you're safe. You know what? Your life is really a lot more important than some broken parts out there. Always give the witness the last word. I never ever want to feel like a witness feels stifled, like they didn't get a chance to tell their full story or ask all the questions that they need to. So they always get the last word. Give your contact info and get theirs if you didn't already get it before, because you may need to follow up with this person later. And on that note, realize that your rapport doesn't stop at the end of the interview. That rapport keeps going for any time that you talk to them later. If that person is involved in an accident in the future and you need to interview them again, then that rapport starts the second time with where you left off the first time. Or if nothing else, you have established credibility and a reputation that gets out there for all future events that you're doing. All right, I'm going to leave it off there for time and come up to questions. Please feel free to ask questions now, or since we are at the end of our time, I'm going to stick around as long as you guys want to talk about whatever. I'll start shooting my watch and doing the war stories if you guys want to talk that stuff, whatever you like. Any questions at this point? Please, Craig.
So do you, I mean, this is like a skill set that, takes a lot of development.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that companies have investigation teams and not just rely on a safety person that may do one investigation a year? You have to stay current in it, I'm assuming.
Well, it certainly does take a lot of practice. So the first time I did some investigation, I really, I didn't know what I was doing, and the quality suffered because of that. But it's built up over the years. Unfortunately, if you designate a investigation team, that really by itself doesn't really get somebody more experience. Good idea, though, yes, to identify an investigation team, because if nothing else, when that balloon goes up and the big thing happens, you have pre-identified who is going to take part in that. Everybody knows and everybody's prepared that Joe Blow is going to be on this team. You have your roster. We're going to call Joe Blow because I need him, and I need him now. So that part is a good idea. Other than that, it's, in my opinion, I really think it's just going to be the experience that you build up. Yes, as the safety person, you want to be, if not the lead investigator, certainly on that team. You may want to think about asking other people and hiring outside to come in and do an investigation. If nothing else, that gives you an unbiased view of your company. You may be completely jaded to and blind to what the true culture is of your company. And obviously the value of, hire me, I'll come in and do whatever. Answer your question? Okay. What else, please?
If you have someone exhibiting post-traumatic stress behaviors, should you call off that interview and get them the resource, or? Personally, I don't, because post-traumatic stress is not something that is necessarily explosive right off the bat, that you're playing with a live wire that is going to go off, that it'll be better later. It's something that there's nerves that are just shimmering under the surface in that person. When I see somebody is really shooken up and I'm interviewing them, I will continue the interview, but I am treading on eggshells. I'm being very careful in what I do. If I do end up unintentionally crossing the line and I trip something on that person, that's when I will call off the interview. And I'll say, okay, let's pause here. I want to make sure your needs are taken care of, and phrase it like that. I'm not able to do a good job at this point, so let's make sure you're taken care of, and we'll resume this a couple days from now. That kind of thing. What else? Go ahead, please.
Because I'm a former cop and I come from the Wicklander type of point of view of this.
Awesome.
When do you find what situations do you find yourself using those types of techniques? Because I have to stop myself because that's my training. That's just normal to me.
Good for you.
So how do you curb that, number one? And when would you suggest actually using some of those techniques?
Okay, and do you have particular techniques you have in mind, or just kind of what I talked about setting witnesses against each other, that kind of thing?
Correct.
Okay, so first of all, kudos, good for you that you have that background, you have that experience, and you are choosing not to use it. You're being absolutely. So you're being judicious in the techniques that you're using. 100% spot on, right on there, because I also know a few things that I don't want to use in the same frame in investigations. So, in general, the answer is I'm not ever going to use those. If I come across an extreme circumstance, if I just recognize that in my own brain of this is an appropriate time to use that, I would, but I need to make sure that I am staying within my charter. So if my charter is only accident investigation, then there really is no time that I would pull out some of those. If I have an expanded charter, if I'm allowed to find liability with things, then yeah, I'm going to use those. But I'm going to tell the person up front, when I set the ground rules for the interview, I'm going to tell the person up front, I am here, part of my charter is to establish liability for this accident, and anything that you say has a potential to contribute to that. Then they're warned, and after they're warned, if I need to, I'll pull out the stops. Okay, let's leave that off there. Like I said, I'm going to hang out for as long as you guys want to. Come on up, we'll talk more.